What's up, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Let me see if I can clean this camera a little bit. There we go. That should be better. Just want to talk about a few things, swing related, of course, and see if you guys have any comments or just some things that have been on my mind. It's kind of tough, like interesting to do these videos because I write down some ideas throughout the week, and I have like all these, pretty strong feelings for the topic at the time that I'm thinking about it. And then when I go to do the videos, I oftentimes forget what was I feeling so strongly about that for. Um, so we'll try to see if we can summon the same strong feelings about it as we do this. The first thing is, well, let me touch on real quickly. This was a topic of conversation, the Ryder Cup, and the unsportsmanlike behavior of what everyone else says is the fans. To me, and I've said this before, and I seem to be the minority out there. And I've honestly never been this kind of person as a player. I was totally fine with showing it. Like, I never remember being someone who tried necessarily not to show emotion, but and I've never, even as a coach, felt like I cared too much about that. But I think that these days we've gone way overboard with the amount of like everything is a chest banging opportunity and a holding up the finger and pointing at people. And I honestly just feel like it's a little cringy. I just honestly, I don't, it's unbecoming to me. And it's not at all what, this may be too high of a standard, but it's not at all what the best ever did. You look at Jack Nicklaus, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth. These guys just didn't do that. And Mickey Mantle. I mean, Mickey Mantle was actually, when he hit home runs, he talked about how he was concerned. He didn't want to show up the pitcher when he hit home runs. It's simply a selfish act, and it has to do with social media. Let's just face it. Everyone wants to just be like the trending video on social media. And so instead of just hitting a home run, they have to go crazy. I mean, people are, and MLB, what's up, man? What's up, Sonny? MLB kind of promotes this behavior, at least the media does, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but all the thumbnails and all like the thumbnails of any article or video or whatever, it's always a player screaming. I mean, it used to be that they showed like a guy mid-swing or fielding a ball, or nowadays it's like half the thumbnails are like, if it's, look at the college games thumbnails. And this is disgraceful. This is college ball. Like, they should be trying to teach sportsmanship. Look at the thumbnails, and they're all players screaming. And it's just so unbecoming, and it's cheesy. And everyone says, man, you're an old head. You're boring. Why? I like just the game. I don't need to see guys running around the bases, acting like, seriously, like monkeys. Like, chill out, dude. Forget the whole act like you've been there before. Just act like a human being now. It's way over the top. And I know at this time of year, people are going to say, oh, but it was the World Series game and he hit it to win the World Series. I don't care if it's to save the planet. You just look, I'm saying it for the person who's doing it. You look like a dork. Stop doing it. It makes you look cheesy. Be someone who just runs around the bases. And, as much as Shohei Ohtani is someone who's just, almost Jordan like level right now, he did it too. He's running around the bay pointing at people and like right after he hits it, he points to his dugout. It's like, dude, just hit the home run and run around the bases. And God, I don't know. Anyways, getting back to the Ryder Cup, a lot of people were on the fans about the fans were acting inappropriately. I kind of disagree. I think the fans should pretty much. I've always been in favor of just like, this whole thing where the fans have to be quiet in golf. Like, why? You should be able to, honestly, like, you should be able to hit a ball and not have it be silent, especially when there's 30,000 people watching you or however many are at some of these tournaments. So I've never been one to like blame the fans. They're fans. What are you going to do? Tell people at a baseball stadium, shh, I'm trying to hit. So I've never been one to blame them, but even if I was, the players are the ones who got them in that state of mind. They were acting like total idiots, and they have been for many years in the Ryder Cup, screaming like absolute crazy people after making a putt or after whatever good thing they did. And it's just so unbecoming. It's so cheesy. And it's mainly because it's just so selfish. And at a place like the Ryder Cup, like, we shouldn't be in a selfish frame of mind. Anyways, I'm completely alone, I feel like, in this opinion. I think it has to do with the fact that most people are just cursory fans. They're just casual is the word. We're mostly casual fans these days because there's so much grabbing our attention. And the casual fan wants to see the dumb stuff that doesn't have to do with the game at all. They want to see something they understand, and they understand pointing and like, oh, do you see that, man? He hit the home run and then he turned and pointed at his dugout. It's like, the serious fan honestly doesn't. That's not what's important, Like, we're more into the X's and O's, the details of technique. I'm sure there are more people like me out there, but I don't find them very much on social media. Most of the people, when I say the fans or the players were acting like idiots at the Ryder Cup, they're like old head, curmudgeon, whatever. That's my feeling on that. I just feel like it's so cheesy. I mean, really, it's so cheesy and corny. All this, I don't know why other people don't see it. I honestly don't. Yeah, there's no, as Simeon says, there's no respect for themselves, really. I just think it makes you look stupid. I can't imagine. I mean, what I respect is someone like Jack Nicklaus or Michael Jordan. They mostly did it with just their actions. And then the actions that they do gets the spotlight. So when guys are doing all this and just all this stupid stuff, man, and it's almost like watching grown men do like a handshake that lasts like 30 seconds. Like, hey, what's up, John? And then they start doing like a little like 10-year-old girl's handshake. That's what it feels like to me. Like, how strange would that be if two of your friends saw each other and started doing, kicking each other's feet and then turning around and high five and, grab their arms, spin with them. Like, that's what it feels like to me. Like, they're all like, hey, next time you hit a home run, how about we do this? And I mean, honestly, maybe for a few years it was kind of cool. I'll give you that. For a couple years, it was like, oh, that's cool. He crossed the plate and did that weird handshake. Whatever. It started probably with the Bash Brothers, right? That's simple. That's a bash. You know what I mean? That's simple. Nowadays, it's like, dude, you hit a home run. Chill out. You know? Yeah, it's attention seeking. But as I said, Simeon, it's it has to do. I'm quite certain it has to do with getting with social media, the influence of social media. They feel like, let me not just hit my home run, but let me get my trending opportunity by hitting the home run, and then as quickly as possible, way before the ball leaves the yard. Wow, he knew it was going over, man, and he flipped his bat. That was so cool. So, like, way before the ball leaves the yard, they want to make sure that they flip the bat or point at someone, or what's coming next. They're just going to pull down their pants or something. You know, where does this end? You know, get on the ground and do the worm all the way to first base. You know, I think it ends with people finally realizing it's corny and just Mickey Mantle it around the bases. That's going to be, if you want to stand out these days, wouldn't that be the best way to stand out? Like, holy crap, he just hit a home run and he didn't flip his bat and he didn't point at anyone. That was actually kind of cool. But you notice the better players typically don't do that stuff. They typically don't do that stuff. It's just so amazing that everyone's doing it and thinking it's cool. Obviously, when everyone's doing something, it's not as cool as it was. That's when it starts to become not so cool. You're probably right, man. Fatherless homes. I mean, really, the baseball has taken on such a kind of a disrespectful kind of um kind of a thuggish kind of feel to it that is unbecoming to me. If you want to, I don't know, you want to dress any sort of way outside of the game or whatever, I don't care at all. You want to act some way outside of the game, I probably would care about that, but inside the game, like, just have some respect, you know. And I don't even feel like I'm usually the guy, like, looking to destroy the system. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm trying to do with the swing. I'm like usually what's the word? Like yeah, maybe they feel like they have to compete with the NBA nonsense. I don't know. I haven't watched the NBA in a long time. I'm very anti-establishment. Like, I typically like to look at the flaws of a system, and kind of thumb my nose at the system in general. But man, this is kind of where I draw the line. Like, I really respect the guys um, who are classy. I really do. I guess I'm old school in that way. You know, like, they're impressive to me. Guys like Jack Nicklaus, guys like Michael Jordan. As much as Michael Jordan trash talked, he always shook hands with people after the game. He lost a lot of respect for Isaiah Thomas when Isaiah Thomas finally lost to the Bulls and wouldn't shake hands. He made a lot of friends outside of he made a lot of friends with players. You know, he didn't burn bridges. I respect that. I really respect that. I mean, I'm shameful to say that I haven't been all that good at that in my life, you know? So and I hope to be better, but I respect people who are classy people. Like, I don't know. It's almost, you know what it seems like to me? It seems like cashing out. You're selling out. You're cashing out. You're hitting the home run, and then you're cashing out on that right now. You can't wait. You know what I mean? You don't have faith in your ability to just wait and see and take the reward slowly. Instead, you want it all at once. And so you're going to cash out, and you're going to do this and whatever else they're doing. I mean, honestly, they're acting like absolute idiots as they round the bases. Hip hop and prison culture has flooded sports. That's a great way to say it, man. And it does feel like it does feel like that. And I like all kinds of music. This is not a rip on uh on any sort of music, but it's like it does. It seems like it's everyone's chance to kind of be on a rap video or something when they hit a home run. Uh, you should work with me, man. I'm supposed to play against Atlantic and American Association next spring. 33-year-old 5'6" utility player. Well, message me and we'll talk. By the way, I can't do this as long as I normally do because I do have um, a lesson at 4 o'clock. So, and by the way, I do consults. So I appreciate you guys, everyone who has reached out for a consult. I do consults online. You can go to my website, theswingmechanic.com, and I do 30-minute consults. Um, and they're $100. And just go over your swing, however you want to do it. You want to show me video, or you want to actually swing while we're talking. But I do all of it online, so you can check that out at theswingmechanic.com. Very few times did MJ show emotion. Yeah, I mean, he would look. There's a difference between when he did it, it was appropriate, and Nicholas, when he did it, it was appropriate. There's an appropriate level. You know. Anyways, yeah, man, I think Simeon is. Unfortunately, it's being a father now myself, and not having a father growing up. You see how important that is. It can teach you the respect part. It can give you kind of that solid foundation where you don't feel like you need to cash out every time you hit a home run. So I think that that's some of it too. And Michael says stoicism has its merits, and I agree. And I don't think I'm necessarily going that far that you have to be stoic. That also can be a problem. I think you should have fun. I think you should release some energy, whether it be negative or positive too. Try to keep the negative, as much as you can. From getting out of control, or from people seeing it even. But I think it does need some release, but there's just a fine line. And if you guys watch the Ryder Cup this year, I don't blame the fans, man. I just don't. I think the players were just atrocious. I mean, you could hear Justin Thomas cursing easily in celebration of a putt he made, and just screaming. It's out of control, man. And everyone wants their few seconds on social media, and that's what it's about. It's not about anything. It's not about the team and all. That's the funny thing. The Ryder Cup is supposed to be so team oriented, and these guys are trying to get their selfish moment. Anyways, that's my feeling. And again, I know I'm in the minority with that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is let's see if I can find it here. So this is just an example of this guy on Instagram. Talked a little bit back and forth with him, messaged him a little, not messaged, but we had a little disagreement, um, because it's back to the old, talk about the whole thread, I guess, was Ohtani. Is he the best hitter of all time? Is he the best hitter? He's not even the best hitter of today. Like, let me just read what this guy says. I'm not going to argue with you on work ethic. I think I was talking about like how, look, kids back in the Sandlot days, this is the big confusion I have. Back in the Sandlot days, kids played hours and hours of baseball. They didn't drill. They actually played hours and hours of baseball. So I think that's what he's talking about when he says, I'm not going to argue with you about work ethic. More time off phones and on fields is an unequivocal good thing. But humans have significantly grown and evolved and improved over 100 years. That's the blanket kind of understanding that people throw on this argument. Humans have improved and evolved, so therefore hitters have gotten better. You're not looking at the nuance of it. It matters how we relate to the game. Our relationship with the game, especially in those formative years, is really the key, guys. I don't know why people can't see that. And then when you accept that, now let's look at, well, how do we relate now compared to how we related before in the early 1900s to the mid 1900s? Well, we just played a shitload of baseball in the early 1900s to the mid 1900s, and we played with crude equipment. Give me anyone who does that over anyone else who spends. I mean, what is the basic way to relate to baseball now? This is no dig at anybody out there. It's just the way it is for most people. In fact, knowing this information, you can change the way you relate to it and have a huge advantage, if you agree with me. But what's the way we relate to it now? We go to a hitting lesson maybe once a week for a half an hour to an hour. We go to a Major League Baseball game. We buy equipment at the, you know what I mean? Like, these are things that kids are feeling like, I'm into baseball. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. I don't mean to be, I'm not one of these people who's just like pissed off at the new generation. I actually am very impressed by the new generation, in many ways. But if you're going to say like the way they practice now is just, it makes them light years better than the guys from the early 1900s, like, I don't see it. I don't see it. Look at the way Ted Williams played. One of his main forms of playing was one-on-one baseball with a guy that was much better than him. And I love that idea. I think one-on-one baseball is actually probably one of the best uses of your time. Just grab another kid and just say, hey, we're pitching to each other and we're going to play one-on-one baseball. And we know after we hit it, we know what kind of, we can just call it. We don't need fielders. We know what a double looks like, a single looks like, a home run. We can agree on those. And you play one-on-one baseball. That way you're getting a ton of pitches to you. Why do you think Ted Williams was so good at pitch recognition? He was so good. He said things that people just didn't even help people because he had so many repetitions at seeing pitches. He could say things like, get a good pitch to hit. That's the most important thing. To the average person, that doesn't mean anything because they just haven't had number of pitches seen that Ted Williams saw. So that's not going to mean as much. The key that he should have said is just view more live pitches. Just engage, and he did say this, but it didn't get as much press. But engage in that pitcher-hitter battle. And I think that's the main thing, man. I don't care if you have a broomstick and a rolled-up sock. Just engage in that battle. I'd prefer not a rolled-up sock. I'd prefer a baseball and a bat because we want to see the spin. We want to see the release of the pitch. If sandlots aren't good or aren't as good as what we have today, why do you think we're getting most of our players from countries that still play sandlot ball? Anyone have an answer to that? Anyone have anything that is that counters that argument? Isn't that right? Aren't we getting a large percentage of our major league players from like Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic? And aren't they like a small fraction of the size of the United States? Actually, that's a good thing. That's actually a good question for chat. What percentage of major leaguers are Dominican? And how much smaller is the Dominican than the US in terms of population? Let's just see if we can get this real quick. Sometimes I just want like a sentence from chat and it gives me like a whole like report. Around 11% of Major League Baseball are from the Dominican Republic. The population in the United States is 347 million. In the Dominican Republic, it's about 10.7 million. So the Dominican Republic has about 3.1% of the U.S. population and has about 11% of the population of Major League Baseball. So what are they doing better? You know? Trying to find here we are. What are they doing? I think, I don't know. This isn't brought up when talking about the level of players today versus the level of players yesterday. This isn't ever talked about. All that's talked about is guys are bigger and stronger. Humans always evolve. We've gotten better at everything. It's just these generalized statements. But the fact is guys, those aren't even correct. We don't always get better at everything. We get better at some things and worse at others at the same time. And then we come back and we pick those things up. And over time, yes, we evolve for the better. But on the micro scale, which would be what the past 100 years would be, that's a micro scale. We've gotten better at a lot of things, but worse at a lot of things. I mean, I always point to diet. Look at diet. I mean, things like diabetes and these, we didn't have the packaged foods. We didn't have the over-processed foods. So in many ways, we've gotten worse with diet. So there's one thing. This is an argument that people Look, I did it too. I did it too, guys. The first time this whole idea was even proposed to me, that players could have been, actually, it was proposed in a way of, ironically, the person was saying, and I was only like 20 years old at the time, and he was saying Babe Ruth was the best hitter of all time. And I laughed. I couldn't believe what he was saying, because to me, Babe Ruth was just this, I don't know, it's almost like a Charlie Chaplin kind of figure, like a clown almost. I mean, the way they portray him, they really haven't done right by him in many ways, way back then, and even the way that they're remembering him now. There's very much a chuckle-headed look at who Ruth was. It's almost fairy tale-ish. And we don't ever really get to the nuts and bolts of the kind of player he was. Well, since that time when I was 20 years old, I've read pretty much every Ruth biography. I've learned quite a lot about who Ruth was. And y'all don't understand who he was, it seems like, especially this guy here. The pitching is substantially harder and faster today. No serious person would disagree with that. Okay, one response is, there are many ways in which hitting was harder. Ray Chapman died in 1920, the year that Ruth actually started his ridiculous hitting. 1920, a guy actually died, so he was able to put that out of his mind and still hit. You guys try that. Someone in your league dies from getting hit by a pitch, and then you go up, now you have to play the rest of the season without a helmet. See how easy hitting is. Ruth also did just as well against Hall of Fame pitchers as he did the regular pitchers. He never had a problem. He or Williams never had a problem with speed. It's really junk that they had a big problem with. And I can relate with that too. The hardest pitcher I ever faced was a guy who was actually a former major league player. I found out afterwards. We played in the summer league, and I swear he was throwing invisible balls to me. It wasn't fast. It wasn't slow, but it wasn't fast. It was just throwing my timing completely off. I had no chance. I was a regular kid of these days who didn't have sandlot ball and didn't see a lot of pitches and saw a ton of machines, thinking that was going to be something that was going to help my pitch recognition. And here I am against a guy who's had probably 15 years out of the major leagues to think about how he could have done better, decides to enter a summer league and learn from all the things he could have done. He had me wrapped up in a pretzel. I had no chance. No chance. I guess the moral of that whole rant is see pitches, guys. Forget going to the sporting goods store and getting another batting glove. Grab your broomstick, grab whatever you have, and get out there and see as many pitches as possible. Spend your time doing that. The time for stoicism, Michael says, when you hit a 2-run bomb, but your team is down by 5. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter because it's all about the individual at that point. They want to get their Instagram reel. Don't bat flip in that situation. Yeah. I mean, the bat flip is just kind of old. It's played out. It's like the Macarena didn't last for 35 years for a reason. Things get played out. I think we're past time that all this junk has been way played out. Like, let's go back to just being classy and being judged on just your performance. Dominicans don't have hitting facility. Yeah. Well, I think they're starting to Americanize, which is hilarious. I mean, people are such followers. It's disgusting. They're just, what are the Americans doing? You know, they're not even paying attention to the fact that they're actually beating us in how they're training their hitters. The Dominicans are beating us in how they're training their hitters, and they're not training their hitters. In the Caribbean and other Latino countries, they don't have Nintendo Switches and PS300. Yeah, and whatever else the hell. And Japanese parents tend to push their kids toward excellence. Yeah. I mean, the Japanese too, when I see they do a lot of instruction on the swing. But when I see it, it seems like they understand the flattening move of the barrel. And like I said, when I first wrote my book, when I first started on this journey, nobody saw the flattening of the barrel as an important thing. So if they're seeing that, to me, that tells me they're on a pretty good page. You know, and they're probably doing a little bit better than we are, at least. And that's probably why you're seeing more Japanese players too. But yeah, America has just gotten so content, and like it's the typical hubris, you know. It's the school bully who gets his ass kicked on the last day of school. Like we're that bully who thinks nobody could ever topple him, and you know, that's what it feels like. And meanwhile, there's nothing to be proud of in how we're training our hitters. I mean, we should be the easy powerhouse in the world in baseball. And we're not. You know, look at the World Baseball Classic. We're basically even with these guys, if not a little lower than these guys. The difference, I think, is sandlot ball. You know, I think if I could make two changes, I would do this. I would stop all the practices in the way that coaches are practicing now, and practices would just be basically scrimmages. That's the first thing. I'm not saying all practice is that. Of course, you can stop practice and go over a few things, but 90% of practice, I think, should just be a scrimmage. And the next thing I would do is everyone has to switch hit from an early age. If I could implement those two changes, I think in a very short amount of time, we'd be back to being the powerhouse in the world in baseball. So anyways, this guy says, have more competition in terms of teams and type of player. Really? Where'd you get that? We have more competition in terms of teams and type of player. I understand all these arguments because this is what I would have said when I was 20. You know, it took me many decades to finally realize maybe Ruth was the best ever. And by the way, you look at his stats, it's not even close, guys. It's not even close. The best years that Bonds had, he had an OPS plus of 205. Remember how amazing that was when Bonds was during his best years? He had an OPS plus of 205. OPS plus is the best way to measure a hitter's value at the plate. It's the single best way to do that. It factors in consistency, factors in power, it factors in the ballpark and the era in which he played. It's the single best way to do it. It's not very confusing. It's just an equation that factors in slugging percentage and on-base percentage. It's the best way. It's real simple. We don't need to argue about who the best hitter is. Ruth had an OPS plus of 206 for his career. Think about how amazing it was during Bonds' most amazing years. It was unbelievably good for anyone who didn't live through it. It was, everyone was talking about it. Even people who hated baseball were talking about it. Ruth did that for his career. That means the beginning years are factored in where he was not as productive. Although his beginning years, he was pretty damn productive. It might have been his best years, actually, even when he was pitching. But his later years, he wasn't quite as productive. It factors in those two. He still had an OPS plus of 206. Now, people say, yeah, but it was easier back then. That's the biggest argument. Well, why wasn't anyone else at 206? Why wasn't anyone else even close? So Ohtani's not the best hitter of all time. He's not even the best hitter of today. Aaron Judge is the best hitter today. And Aaron Judge is quite a bit better than Ohtani. Aaron Judge is quite a bit lower than Ted Williams. That's how good Ted Williams was. What are you going to say? Ted Williams couldn't hit the pitching today? He didn't have problems with speed, guys. He didn't have problems with speed. Speed probably helped Williams and Ruth out more anyways, because they're just going to hit the ball harder. He did have problems with junk, and Williams also did very well against Hall of Fame pitchers of his era. Let's see. Again, relative to his contemporaries, Ruth was. Oh, this guy also said that Ruth. This guy right here, Ben Sheehan, on Instagram, said that Ruth, something like Ruth couldn't make a D1 college team today. I've heard this before. This is like, this is like something that people say these days about Ruth. But if we're talking about pure skill and talent, it's way harder to be that much better than your peers today than it was back then. What information are you going by, Ben Sheehan? I have a hard time understanding how anyone can argue otherwise. That's how I feel. Isn't the most important thing when it comes to a game is the amount of hours you put into it? Kobe Bryant, who was considered pretty average in his athletic skill, what was the one thing he valued? He valued getting up, or not the one thing, but one of the things he valued that made him good, and he said made him as good as he was that he put more time. By getting up at 4, he was able to just accumulate more time at the craft than everybody else. And that's how he sailed past people. Well, what did Ruth have? He had way more time into the game than I can't imagine a kid having as much time playing the game in 5 years that Ruth accumulated in 1 year. They said about St. Mary's, where Ruth went to school as a 7-year-old and all the way up until graduated and went to play pro ball. That's a long time. That's a decade of your most formative years. And they said of St. Mary's that it was basically a baseball camp. These guys were playing baseball all the time. And there wasn't screens. This is before television. This is what they did. We're not talking, man, I played a doubleheader today. I'm exhausted. No. They probably played 6 games a day. And then they went out the next day and I mean, honestly, And we know Ruth. Like, if you know Ruth, and I know the kind of guy he was endless energy, endless, you know, um, endless energy. He just always wanted to be in the mix. And I can see him playing just nonstop, especially, being a young kid, having even more energy. Um, so I don't know. I don't know why people are so quick to say, are guys bigger today? Yeah, probably they're bigger. Yeah, you look at the NFL, it's pretty clear they're bigger people. And for someone like, that matters. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. Barry Bonds, when he gained 40 pounds of muscle and turned himself into the best hitter of all time for those few years, showed us that muscle matters. So I'm not going to trivialize the importance of muscle, but it's not all there is. And the thing is mostly we're talking about skill when we argue about this. We're saying, could Babe Ruth's skill hang with today? Babe Ruth was 215, so he could hold his own in terms of body weight and muscle anyways. He didn't have a whole lot of muscle, granted, but he was kind of that dad strong kind of strength. And the whippy kind of quick reflexes, kind of like a Tyson Fury kind of strong, like just good at his craft, even though the muscles weren't showing through. But he had plenty of weight behind his hits too. But I just can't understand how people argue otherwise. And this guy's saying the same thing about my argument. Guys like Ohtani and Judge, he says, and Bonds and Griffey, the exception of Mays, are probably the best ever. I'd put Manny Ramirez up there too. Most of these guys have a career OPS over 1. Only Judge and Ohtani had at this season. And yes, 2 others who have it are Ruth and Williams. And as a teacher, Ted, and so the greats is definitely important, but I just think today's players face much harder competition. Why? They're playing less baseball, guys. Baseball, look, I think what it is people see these guys and they see them like doing squats and deadlifts in the offseason. They think there's no way guys back in the early 1900s did those things, so they're better now. Baseball is not a squat and deadlift competition. It's mostly skill. You take a guy who already has the skill, like imagine taking Ruth and putting 20 pounds of muscle on him. Well, that's going to do a lot. And I think he probably, if he had 20 more, 30 more pounds of muscle on him, which could have been done in today's day, if Ruth somehow just manifested in today's world and put on 20 to 30 pounds of muscle, I think he could approach 80 homers. The same way I think if Griffey put on 20, 30 pounds of muscle in his prime, he could have approached 80 homers. I think conversely, if Judge had better swing mechanics, I don't think his swing is terrible, but I think his build is perfect and his swing is just good. If his swing was perfect, for sure, we'd be seeing him approach 80 homers. I said this back when I wrote my first book. I knew guys would be getting bigger. And I knew that swing mechanics we're going to get better at teaching it, because it was not that good when I first started. Skank has made it a little better, but it's still pretty dismal. But once we see a Judge who also has like a Griffey level swing, then we're going to see 80 homers approached. We may even see the 400 average be approached. So anyways, let me just read these real quick. Michael Allen says, in the Caribbean and other Latino countries, they don't have Nintendo. Yeah, I already read that. Sorry. I had Michael Allen says I had to explain to my 11-year-old son this year, whose select team made it to the Final Four of their state tournament, that my hometown Little League team 30 years ago would have kicked his team's tail. I mean, and probably because you played more like just it wouldn't even be recreational ball. It's just like you played just, I think it's important to just go out in the field and play. Like everyone's always playing in front of an audience today. I think a huge advantage of the Sandlots is that you're not feeling like you have to perform, and you can play and experiment and be creative and try this, try that. Let me try hitting lefty. Anyways, I think I've ranted enough. I hope you guys like this, and if you do, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, and you'll help out the cause. And thank you guys so much. If you want to do a one-on-one consultation, just go to my website, theswingmechanic.com, and you can schedule it there. Thank you guys, and take care.